I call to order this study session on March 25th at 6 p.m. We are going to start with new business. New business A on presentation on the City of Mountain Wireless Code discussion of the franchise agreement with Advances High Speed Internet.
And Madam Mayor, if I may take this moment to introduce my colleague to the council. Good evening, everyone. I would like to introduce everyone to Emily Romanenko. She is a partner here at Ogden Murphy Wallace. She works with me in the Seattle office in the municipal practice group and is an amazing colleague and also an amazing resource regarding wireless communications in small cell facilities. In your package should be a presentation that she'll be going over now, and she'll also give some high-level details about a potential applicant who is interested in potentially installing some wireless communications facilities. So with that, I will turn it over to Emily.
Thanks, Drew, and good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having me here this evening. Again, my name is Emily Romanenko. I'm an attorney here at Ogden Murphy Wallace. I work with Drew on a lot of municipal issues, and my specialty is telecommunications, which is why Drew has asked me to present on this topic for you this evening. I have a PowerPoint that I believe you all have in your packet. I can also share my screen, but it looks like perhaps the city clerk will get that up for us. The purpose of a wireless code is similar to any other municipal codes that we have, is to basically provide a process, a framework by which we review wireless facilities that come to the city and want to be deployed here. There are sort of several buckets, if you will, of wireless facilities. There's macro facilities, which, as you see there, I have a picture, a small one of a large facility. These are kind of your standard big antennas. They're usually on a standalone tower or placed on something, for example, like a water tower, which we'll get into in a little bit more detail here tonight. And they send a signal long distances. And then there are what we have called small wireless facilities. These were sort of big news back in 2016, 2017, 2018. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, issued some new regulatory standards that local jurisdictions had to comply with. And then the intent for those is to send a signal to basically increase capacity. So they're really used more dense locations, like, for example, down in Pikes Place Market or on the Las Vegas Strip or places like that, where there's a lot of folks in a smaller, denser area. There's also eligible facility requests. These are more streamlined permits because the intent there is to modify an existing facility. So the federal government has said the streamlining process for the permits related to that has to be a lot more administrative, and there's less design standards related to that. And then as part of your wireless code, you could also have leasing requirements, leasing provisions. So for example, in the particular case I'm going to talk to here momentarily, the leasing provisions would set forth what sort of parameters people would need to follow if they wanted to place a antenna or a wireless facility on something that the city owned, for example, like a water tower or on City Hall or something like that. So that's kind of the what a wireless code is, what it would do for you. I'm going to get into the details here a little bit more. We're going on to the page 3 there. Where does the city stand? The city has no wireless code provisions currently. That's a little bit problematic, just as you might imagine. If you didn't have a building code, people could build sort of whatever they wanted, and that would, result in probably some chaotic building structures. So if there's no standard to hold an applicant to, they get to come in and just kind of put up whatever they want. And so these are 2 examples of some types of small wireless facilities that I've seen deployed. On the left there, we've got a light pole and some signage, and then the small wireless facility is just a little bit there up on top, kind of almost like a Q-tip. It's sort of intended to blend into the pole. And then on the right, you've got an old wooden pole there, and it's got just stuff stuck all over it. And so the intent would be that if you had code provisions, you could have a design standards and a permitting process that would require public notice and accountability and standards that they would have to be held to. So on page 4, I've got the key elements of the macro facility code. It would establish where these types of facilities could go. They would encourage co-locations. And if people were co-locating is when, AT&T and Verizon go on the same pole, as opposed to AT&T having its own pole and then Verizon having its own pole. New towers would be approved by city council. New standalone towers would be approved by city council. There'd be a full permitting process, and there'd be design standards and concealment standards. And then going on to page 5, I just thought it'd be helpful to include a couple of examples. On the left there is what it could look like on a water tower. That's just sort of one example based on that water tower. And on the right, of course, is sort of that standard standalone pole. There's some additional design standards that could be incorporated. This is where you have the most flexibility. This is on page 6 here. It talks about where the antennas are located, what kind of camouflage and screening that you could have. If you're locating on a building, sort of what standards are related to that. And so it really, you can really get into the nitty gritty details here about sort of how you regulate macro facilities. And similarly, going on to page 7 here with the wireless facilities, kind of the same concept that is followed with the macro facilities. The key elements would be where these can go, these types of facilities. A lot of jurisdictions have been pushing them to be in the right of way, to not be allowed on private property. And again, having a whole permitting process and design standards. And we saw a couple pictures up above, but I have a couple more included here for you just to help kind of visualize. There's an actual installation there on the right here in Seattle. And then on the left, this was a proposed facility that came in, and I don't think they ended up getting deployed, but it's just kind of an example of what it looks like. And then I've got some additional design standards that are what could be incorporated on page 9 there. These types of facilities, the small wireless facilities, typically go on poles in the right of way. And so there's a lot of standards around a lot of public work standards around the design, whether they go on existing poles, whether they go on new poles, and sort of trying to limit their impact to the right of way, just because that's typically where they do go. And there's already, things in the right of way. And it's important to make sure that you don't continue to clutter the right of way or make it unsafe for the public's travel, which is what the main use of a public right of way is for. On page 10 is the eligible facilities request. This language and these code provisions will come right from federal law, so there's not a whole lot of wiggle room there, but it is nice to have the process spelled out in the local code. So if someone did want to modify their existing facility, we have the process already in place there. And again, you'll see it's a pretty quick turnaround time. It's 60 days. That's much tighter turnaround time, review time for a permit than you would see for a building permit or something like that. And again, the intent is because they're not substantially changing the facility. If they are, then they get kicked out to the regular process. So as we sort of alluded to at the beginning of the presentation, there is a current applicant that has talked to the city, Advanced High-Speed Internet. They're a local internet and phone provider over there on the east side with you guys. They're asking to place a couple of antennas and radios on the city water tower. They're currently on in a nearby private property owner's windmill, I believe he said. I don't recall exactly. And as I note there, they serve about 30 to 40 local Mapton customers. In order for them to go on to the city's water tower, they would need a lease because we'd be leasing the space on the water tower. I believe his name is Austin. He's told me that He's asked for a franchise only because if they did want to run more equipment in the right of way, he just wanted to have that agreement already in place. The difference between a lease and a franchise is that a lease regulates the use of city-owned property like a water tower or town, city hall or something like that, or park. A franchise agreement is for the use of the right of way. He's asking for both documents so that he doesn't have to come back and get one or the other, depending on what he needs to do. They're not looking to deploy further beyond those 30 to 40 customers right now, but they could be in the future. And so I think it would make sense to potentially explore both a franchise and a lease. But you could also just do lease and say, no, come back and talk to us if you think you're really going to expand and we can talk about giving you a franchise. When we negotiate these agreements with providers like this on behalf of a municipality, when OMW does this for municipalities, we usually ask that the provider pay the city's legal fees associated with that, because but for that provider coming in and asking for this lease, the city wouldn't be incurring those costs. And that's actually codified in state law that we're allowed to ask for that, and they have to pay it. He's indicated that there's not a whole lot of revenue that's generated from this, and so he would be looking to really sort of have a cap on those costs. So if we did this, I think it would be fair to say that the city would have to absorb some of the cost, but that he has indicated that he would be willing to reimburse the city for some of it as well. So I just wanted to be upfront about sort of what the cost to the city would be. In terms of a lease fee for going and being on the water tower, again, he's leasing a space, so traditionally he would have to pay some sort of lease fee or rental rate for that. He's not getting a whole lot of revenue from this service, but would be willing to pay some sort of nominal fee. Alternatively, he did offer that he would be willing to provide service, wireless, internet and a phone service to City Hall. And so that's actually something I've seen in other jurisdictions, that they'd prefer to have, high speed service as opposed to a lease fee. And so that's something that you could explore as well as a compensation method instead of getting a straight cash payout. So going down to the options there, we've got a couple options for you, exploring the adoption of a wireless code if you think that that's something that's where you want to invest your time in right now. We have lease templates and provisions, and this particular applicant seemed very willing to work with the city. So I don't know that this is the time to invest in adoption of a wireless code, but we do have template wireless codes, and we could sort of modify those pretty easily to fit Mabton's needs if that's something that you wanted to explore. If you didn't want to adopt a wireless code, we would just have to rely on the existing building codes and zoning regulations to regulate the placement of a wireless facility, and it would probably be pretty limited. As we again, with this particular applicant, we know where he wants to go, so assuming council feels fairly comfortable with that, I wouldn't, there's not a whole lot of heartburn in not having a wireless code before we process that lease. And then I think the final thing that we'd want to ask direction on is whether to move forward with a lease discussion with this particular applicant. So
Emily,
I know I just,
Emily, I think we may have lost the council chambers there for a moment. Can you just, and I think we lost it when you were first talking about the option about the wireless code. If you don't mind just taking back a little bit so we can.
No problem. Okay, so that actually, so the options I think are there in the packet, but exploring the execution and adoption of a wireless code. Again, I'm repeating myself, so forgive me if you've heard any of this already, but we do have, OMW does have template wireless codes, so it wouldn't be a huge lift for Mabton to adopt such a code, but it would take some time. That said, you don't have a whole lot of people knocking at your door to come in and have a wireless facility here. So you'd want to think about sort of what other priorities you have and whether this one warrants, being at the top of the list. If you didn't adopt a wireless code and you had applicants come in, they would, we would just rely on your existing building code and your zoning code to regulate the placement of these. Again, this applicant knows where he wants to go. And so as long as that seems reasonable to, city council, and there's no heartburn with that, then, we don't really need a code to tell him that he can go on the water tower. You could just tell him that. And so, in this particular instance with this particular applicant, it doesn't seem like we need a wireless code right this instant. So it could be something that you maybe pick up later this year or even next year, down the road, depending on whether you get more applicants coming in the door. And then the last piece of the puzzle here would be whether to direct staff to begin a lease negotiation with Advanced High-Speed Internet. That's the applicant that's looking to come in. Any lease that we draft would be negotiated, and we sort of work out the terms, but then it would need to come back to council for review and consideration. You ultimately have control over the city's property and would make the final decision related to that. So I know I gave you a lot of information in a very short amount of time, so I'll pause there. If there are any questions, concerns, additional information, I'd be happy to provide that.
Emily, we did have a question from a council
Of course.
member. And he asked, what is the difference between this and Spectrum?
So just a different provider, same type of equipment, technology, etc. offerings, just a different provider.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's just wanting to use our water tower because he already serves for about 30 to 40 residents, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
That he wants us to start using or have us, not, like he's not trying to get extra customer, like this isn't like a sales pitch, right?
No, great question. Not a sales pitch. If we don't allow him to go on our water tower, he will probably have to leave Mapton because there's not another facility that he could put his antennas on. And he doesn't have the resources, as I understand, to build his own standalone tower to put them on. So our water tower is the only place that he could do that. So if he doesn't go on there, it's likely that those 30 to 40 customers here in Mapton would have to go find a different provider. So he's pretty motivated. I mean, they don't want to lose those customers. They're pretty motivated to try and make this a work with the city, but it is definitely not a sales pitch. This is just, how do we make sure we continue to provide service here in Mapton?
I have a question. Are they planning to expand more throughout the community, or?
They're wanting to, that's why they want to.
So it's each individual's preference, right? Whether they want to go that route or stay with DirecTV or Spectrum or whoever. It's just
100%.
provider.
Yep, exactly right.
And that would be on the monthly cost. Services monthly cost.
Yes.
What is the monthly cost?
To have this service, I don't know. I'm not sure. That wasn't something I asked. And that's between the provider and the customer. That's not something that the city would weigh in on.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with us. Why she's here is just, hey, this, we have to have this type of conversation if we're going to allow him to use our water tower wherever he wants to place it. Can you just kind of further explain as to like what is it going to cost us, or how does it benefit the city? Just how you were saying that he's he's very willing to take on some of the costs.
Yeah. So again, under state law, cities are authorized to charge providers who come to them the actual cost that it is to the city to negotiate a lease, negotiate a franchise, issue permits, etc., as it relates to wireless providers. In this instance, he said, we don't make a whole lot of money off of this. We're operating on the margin. If you make us charge, if you charge exorbitant rates, we probably won't be able to pay those. And so therefore we may not get our permit and we may not stay here. So the cost to the city would likely be, it's hard to say, but maybe $1,000 on the high end, assuming the lease negotiation is straightforward and he doesn't push back on a lot of it. We have template leases that are already in place. And so assuming he doesn't want to negotiate a lot of those provisions, it would not take much time to get a lease in place. And he would be willing to chip in, like you said, maybe $1,000 to that. So, at most it would be $1,000, probably a little bit less. Then the cost after that would be just reviewing, administratively reviewing the lease on a, semi-regular basis. The benefit I would say would be you could either, ask for some nominal lease fee to rent that space on the water tower, or you could have, like I said, he offered instead of a lease fee, payment to bring his services to City Hall, which would be high-speed internet and phone service. So that would be the benefit to the city.
And I mean, is that $1,000 per month, $1,000 per year, or what is it?
That's a one-time cost to negotiate the lease. That would just be a one-time fee to the city. Yep. And in theory, he would pay some or hopefully all of that.
If I could just.
Yeah.
Add something here. So we've seen this in other cities where they'll mount communications antennas on water reservoirs. There's some engineering review time associated with that we typically provide. When you think about it, they're attaching something to your tank full of water. The good news is your existing reservoir has 3 large diameter conduits through the foundation and stubbed up in anticipation of something like this. You don't really want conduits attached across as trip hazards across the foundation. So you have 3 conduits that were put in for future antennas. So you have that real estate to potentially use, whether it's with these guys or someone else. The trick is though, when they're attaching it up the side of the tank and to the roof of the tank, they can't weld anything to the tank. And if they weld it, it's going to pop paint off on the inside, right? And you can't just take the tank off for this type of thing, right? Then we're talking a fair amount of money to take the tank offline and repair it. And so anything they need to do, they need to be able to attach to the outside of the tank without welding or damaging the coatings. And so sometimes people can do it with magnets. We've reviewed those designs before, but I want you to be aware that there's that impact that you will need to assess, or that they would need to be prepared to provide.
Right. I think that's the right way to frame that, is that in theory, that's a permit cost, because that should be absorbed, or not absorbed, but addressed through them applying for a permit, the city staff reviewing that, and that when they apply for a permit, they have to pay a permit fee. And in theory, that cost should be captured there. Again, we don't capture all of our costs, but that's where we would try to capture a lot of it.
I have another question. Are these water tanks? Are they grounded? As far as in case of some unfortunate reason we get hit by lightning,
Yeah.
are they grounded out?
They're prepared for that sort of thing, probably. Yeah.
They are.
I'm trying to think if they're grounded. We frequently put grounding on things. We don't always put grounding on things. So, honestly, if you're isolated, if the concrete isolates it, then you're effective. So good question.
Okay, and
It should
then
be fine.
another thing is there a requirement for height? Because we have 3 tanks over here, the other part. Do they require a certain height for these antennas, or? I know the old tanks are being used at all.
Yeah, I don't. Generally, they're gonna always want to be on the highest tank,
Yeah.
right? Because they can reach the farthest. And if they put it on the shortest tank, then you're gonna off. I don't know. I'm not.
Okay,
I'm
no.
specifically working with.
Yeah.
He's aware, the applicant's aware of the height of the tower and wants to go there. So presumably it is sufficient to meet his needs, I would say.
Okay,
So, Byron Gums, Yakima Valley Conference Government's land use planner for the city of Mapton. You do have 2 towers just a block or 2 away that
Mhm.
may be available for co-location on a private entity. So I don't know if that's something that's been explored with this individual, or if they prefer the water tower for some reason or another. But there are a couple of cell towers that there may be availability for co-location already.
If they're
So-
privately owned, that's a great point. If they're privately owned, I'm gonna bet that they're gonna charge probably more than we will to go lease space on there. But it certainly is something I can ask the applicant if they've explored, and if they haven't, why not? And if they have, then why are they proposing not to go there, just so we can bring that information back. That's a great point.
And with these micro cells, these small wireless antennas and things like that, oftentimes the water towers are where they're located. The city as mentioned, currently doesn't have any development regulations for wireless facilities or communication towers. As part of the periodic update process, we are updating the zoning ordinance, and is identified as something that we would be putting into the ordinance.
Byron, these are here across the street,
The-
are those on city property?
No,
Oh, okay,
no, there was, so the way that it was processed in 2022. Is the zoning ordinance has a provision where if there are commercial uses that aren't identified. Within the commercial zone, it needs to follow a conditional use permit process. So that's where we did have a hearing with the planning commission as well as city council holding that for approval. That was late 2022, early 2023. Diamond Cell Tower.
That's the one across the street. from-
yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. across
And
the
it
street.
has the fencing and the
Yeah.
plants around it.
There's another, I think it's Palm County, this side of the highway, this side of the road.
Right
Yeah.
there,
Right
next
there,
to the fire station. Yeah.
yeah.
There's
I
two of them.
think, didn't the city sell that property to them and the city. They paid the city money to do that. We didn't pay them to do it, like this one over here is wanting us to pay something.
I think that was like on a rental.
Yeah, it was like
Well-
$100,000 lifetime thing, you put that tower there.
But he's willing, yes, but he's willing to, reimburse if I, right, okay. So basically, yeah, so it's just like, we're gonna, yes, we would pay, but then he's gonna reimburse us those $1,000.
And then we were charging them rent to put this. thing
That,
together.
so then then that'll be, but see, that's what we're gonna talk about next, where she's just presenting this. And so next we'll talk about, leasing, contracts, just, price, things like that. We'll go in more depth, but she just wanted to present. this.
If that's right, if council is open to hearing more about leasing this space on the water tower, water tank, I would recommend that there be direction given to Ogden Murphy Wallace to go start the lease negotiations and bring back proposed deal points for council's consideration. And then we would finalize the lease and he would move on from there. So this is like you heard is just the sort of the first bite at the apple. Is this something that council's even interested in further exploring? If so, we can bring back additional information and those additional deal points and the options for each of those based on what the applicant is willing to do.
Emily, I think that would be a good idea. I think we need a little bit more information on this and then go from there. But
Okay.
I would assume there's a good possibility that it'll be doable, but we need to
Okay.
look into it a little bit more.
Would it be helpful to have the applicant come to another meeting to get, to sort of speak to it himself so there's not a middle person, or would you prefer to just have us bring back another presentation with those proposed deal points?
I think it'd be better if the applicant was to come and kind of explain the whole thing to us. I mean,
Sure.
you did a good job right now, but I'm not saying you did, but you did a good job. At least this way, we can talk to him or her
Yes.
directly.
Yes. Understood. I always like to do like a first pass with the council, just kind of give them my perspective so that they are prepared. And then now you know what to ask and sort of what to sort of expect when he comes in. So I'll go back and let him know that the council's further, interested in exploring this further. And could he come to another meeting, and I'll work with staff to find a, mutually agreeable time, and we'll bring that back with more information.
Let me, is he this person locally or is he like 3 hours away?
No, he's somewhere on the east side. I can't remember. I want to say maybe Yakima. So
Okay.
he's somewhat local-ish.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you all. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll now move on to item B, discussion resolution 2026-17. A resolution approving amendment number 11 to the contract for professional engineering services with Gray and Osborne for drilling well 7 and 8 test wells.
Good evening, council. You are aware, the well project we talked about many times, this is the next chapter in that. The contractor is planning to start drilling the final test well this week or next week. Staff location with the plant or the cemetery, and there's some pros and cons, and we're trying to find a location. They're ordering their parts. We've been in their schedule for a while, and we should be able to speak next week to do that second test well. We talked about before, the goal of this is to gather information. At this point, we're trying to gather information. You got some information of what the aquifers like from any school, or go all the way out by the river and see what it's like. That will feed into the other project we're working on, which is a feasibility analysis of all your different options. That will let us assess it. We'll know what type of aquifer, if you could put some sort of water facility in that cemetery. Obviously, there's some forest reservations of putting a potable water facility at a wastewater treatment. That's kind of why we're doing this last. Test well doesn't commit to anything. It's covered by the grant. Just more information, right? So that the city can plan for the future and decide, okay, big picture, what's our best option for water? So that contractors, we've already got that work under contract with them. They're just waiting for the city staff to pick a location, and then they'll go that well. The other piece of this, and I've kind of been waiting to know when the test well is actually going to happen to bring it to you, is as you can imagine, when we scoped this project from an engineering perspective, it was a very different project. Now it's turned into a test well project over many years. And so this is essentially some additional engineering and hydrogeology work to do these test wells. The design and coordination with the contractor and some of the follow up. It wasn't good, which was and so that's what's before you. It's within your grant, DDBG grant. That will essentially expire this summer. That's why we're trying to get this feasibility study done. We're trying to get all this done before it expires in the summer. Because they essentially said, okay, we know what's in goes plan, but like we'll use this money to try to figure out at least what the next steps are in the city. So that's what this agreement is. Answer any questions about that or kind of the project we're having.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
There was a $500,000 grant from the commissioner's office that was given to Mountain. Is that some of that money being used for this?
It could, yes. It was for well drilling projects. It
Yeah.
was part of the funding package that was going to do the wells. And the plan was to use that. So if we find a place, we have a plan to do a well, then certainly that water, that's what that money is for.
Okay, who's deciding the place as far as where you're gonna drill?
At the cemetery or treatment plant.
Or wherever you're gonna drill, I mean, who makes that decision? You guys?
So it is ultimately staff. Ultimately, the city decides that. It's called an area of potential effect. So when we did the environmental cultural review, we said, we're gonna work in this area. And they said, we reviewed it, said, cool. Later, we came back and we did the test well on the north side of town, and we had to work with the regulators to expand that. When we expanded it to include the treatment plant and the cemetery. So if we wanted anywhere else besides that area, then we have to take a step back and do an environmental cultural review. Which is why we're mainly looking on city property, because city has control, and because that's within the approved environmental cultural review area. And that's why we're looking at the treatment plant or the cemetery. The goal with this is to get as close to the river as we can, up close to the river, further north. And hopefully find better aquifer conditions. Between the two sites, initially the hydrogeologist and I talked and we're like, this looks like a good spot in the treatment plant. We came back to city staff, your contract treatment plant operator had some concerns with that. Then I talked to him about his concerns, and he was gonna work with the city hall staff to try to find a place at the cemetery that would work as well. The end game here is this is just a test well, so it isn't something permanent. We may leave it so that the city can take samples in the future and use it. So we don't want to put it in a plot that's been sold or where it's in the way. We cap it, put bollards around it, and we can use it as a sampling. You want to test in 5 or 10 years. What are the aquifer here? You can use it again for that purpose. But it's not a permanent facility that would become water. It's cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than a production well, and tells you what the aquifer conditions are, so that you can assess the big picture feasibility. You have aquifer conditions. The test well we did. Backing up, the test wells over here on this side of town, very poor water quality, almost no water, 20 GPM, which is a drop in the bucket for the city. Behind the elementary school, 200 to 300 GPM, but you had you had nitrates and you had iron, manganese, and maybe arsenic issues. And that's 2 treatment systems. It's just one, okay, maybe it's worth it. But 2 treatment systems, 200 to 300 GPM is good, but it's not 1,000 GPM. And so to pay for 2 treatment systems for that was enough to say, we can take a look at the big picture here. And so as part of that, let's go all the way out by the treatment plant, the cemetery, close to the river, in the hope that either you find a lot more water, or you find, okay, maybe we have one of these things, we need a new treatment system for one thing, but not two treatment systems. And then all of that, we're looking on our report, then to essentially go back to the drawing board and look at all different options. One of them would be, we put, you only get 200 GPM, but maybe two treatment systems for 200 GPM isn't worth it. Or maybe you can drill multiple small wells nearby, bring it all together, treat it, and then pump it into the system. You know, something like that, maybe then the economics of the treatment make sense. But until we drill this test well, we don't know, and because there've been enough issues, it's not one where we'll just roll the dice and go for it. Be surprised later.
The main goal here, Jimison, is to be able to find somewhere where the aquifer can sustain the infrastructure that's gonna be going on here in Mountain. I would think that would be the main goal, not only that, but quality of water.
Yes, and it's the shallow aquifer,
Yeah,
because your other wells are a deeper bucket of water, right? They're a lot deeper. You pretty much allocate your water right to that deeper aquifer. You purchase the water right for the shallower bucket of water. So we're trying to find a place around Mountain in that shallower bucket of water where there's enough water and of a reasonable quality that you could put a well with the money to capture.
okay, one more thing.
Yeah.
I brought this up a while back. I've never got a response back. I've never been sent any information or anything. I brought up the issue about liquid hydrogen. I brought up the issue about ice making. I've never heard anything. So has anybody even looked into it or even thought about it, about maybe doing something so that we can rehab our wells?
But I remember when we discussed this,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, but beyond that discussion, no, we weren't given a direction to pursue any of those alternatives. So the value of ice picking is it cleans the accumulation out of the pipes.
Yes,
So if currently, your existing wells have existing constituents like iron and manganese that precipitate in your pipes. You ice pick now, that cleans your pipes out, but you're continuing to pump that back and it will just go back. So the optimal time to ice pick would be, you build a treatment system, which we're working on a pilot study for that. But you build a treatment system so that it's no more is coming into your pipes, and then you ice pick it to clean the pipes, right? It goes together. If you do the ice picking now, it clean your pipes, but it doesn't stop more from coming in. It doesn't stop more from wells. So certainly it is a good option, but likely to be completed in conjunction with treatment, not in the sample.
okay, well, what about the liquid nitrogen?
No, so that is a form of well rehabilitation. We recommend regular well rehab of your wells. I think you did some rehab at well 4 a few years ago. And that's certainly something the city should do. That is one type of rehabilitation. And so generally, when we're working on a rehab project, we'll work with hydrogeologists, they video the well, they can do a water quality sample from the well and see, what is this well individually? And that liquid hydrogen is one tool in the toolbox for well
Yes.
rehab. Different people have, stronger or more negative views about its efficacy or the reasonableness of using it. When you're doing a well rehab, you've got mechanical treatment where you're brushing, you're cleaning accumulation. You've got chemical treatment where you're putting stuff into the well to try to put chemicals in. And that's usually something that's determined, looking at the well video, looking at the water quality samples, and come up with like, okay, these are the things that this well needs. Is there a biological growth that needs to be addressed or precipitated? And so certainly if the city wants to pursue rehabilitation of the wells, that's something that we could look at. Likely well 5 would be your candidate for that next.
Or 6?
6 is new enough that the problems with 6 are aquifer related, not necessarily.
Okay.
It's new enough that stuff, but certainly you can do it. Maybe not much bang for your buck there, given that it's relatively new age and it's relatively low production. Well 4 is an older well. We've done some rehab on it. We could do rehab on it again. I don't think it was that long ago that they did rehab, but we did look at maybe longer. The key time would be winter to do this because you want to not really. So you don't want to take well 5 off doing something.
Yeah.
Certainly though, if that's something you guys want to look at, we certainly look into about how to proceed in direction. Likely first step would be, you would need to do a water quality sample. And we can do some pretty sophisticated, there's a lab in Kansas that does some pretty sophisticated water quality analysis. And then try to get a video of the well. You have a port, sometimes you can get a video down, otherwise you have to pull the pump, and that's 30,000 to pull the pump. Then you'll put a camera down, that's 2,000 to get a video. And then looking at that video and the result of that, we worked with a hydrogeologist to analyze it, come up with a recommended treatment, put a contract together, bid it, for a contractor to do it. So, just finishing up a project, Kittitas County for well rehab. The contract there, it's apple, not apple to apple, right?
Yeah.
Treatments, it was about $7,000 for the rehab work. All told, it's probably gonna cost the city $120,000 for the rehab. They discovered some things with that well that they decided this is not a well we're gonna invest money in, because when we cleaned all the accumulated stuff off, they found holes in the casing. So didn't do the main goal, which was to get it to operate well, but some secondary goals of establishing sort of its past production capabilities for water right purposes. And at least know that not to spend money, spend
Yes.
less money on this,
Yeah.
not invest a lot of money in this.
You see, that's right, that's where I stand right now, Jameson, is that something is better than nothing. So why not start where it's less expensive and then move on from there? I don't think what do we really have to lose? Not a whole lot, because we're either gonna gain something or we're gonna end up right back to square one.
Yeah.
So why not
Good to do.
take
every
the
10 to
chance and
15 years.
invest into something like that, to see what the outcome is, at least this way we'll know. And that project can just come to it and say, hey, it didn't work, we tried it didn't work,
Sure.
let's move on and hope for something better. Thank you very much for the information.
Yeah,
Really appreciate it.
absolutely. Happy to chat.
Thank you, Janet. For item C, after we discussing with our city attorney, we will be tabling this to a future meeting.
See,
Yes, item C. Under new business. Okay, so we're gonna move on to old business. Discussion on the approval of resolution 2026, a resolution of the city council of the city of Macton, Washington, adopting a climate element community asset list and priority list and providing for an effective date. And so Byron will be. Are we? Talking about?
You can, I'm not sure what.
Do you guys have any questions about the asset list?
well, the one that we did last week.
Yeah. I mean, Byron's here, so if you guys have any, I know there's a little bit of. No, I know, but like, are you guys, did you guys see one? Okay,
I'm good with it,
okay.
I'm good with it, right?
Sure, I mean, it's more, I'm here in case you have any questions on the process or any
Yeah.
next steps, but it's council's decision on what those priorities.
Yes. Mhm.
Well, we had a good discussion on it, so I think we're all
Great,
on the same page as far as what we agreed on, so yeah.
glad to hear it.
So, we will move on to, item B, discussion and receive direction on the rental of the church located at 406 Washington Street. I think so too. If you guys take a look at the draft, I don't know. No, sorry, never mind.
Yeah, I thought you would put up to the rest of the council to get them to go in so they can see what's
Which,
there.
I mean, Sophie had said she didn't need to see it, she's already seen it. Ruben went,
I took a trip through it.
yeah,
Okay.
Mary wasn't able to, and Vera also, said she was fine, she's seen it before, so. Ruben was able to take control, so.
I took a tour through it and, there's things that need to be done to it, but they're not like major projects. But I think it's rentable. But as a council and with the mayor, we need to come up with some kind of plan as far as what is the agreement gonna consist of as far as the rental agreement and things like that. But I think it's doable. the stairs need to be fixed, you know, there's some, I don't know if they wanna replace lighting or whatever. You know, but they're not major projects. You know, so if we can come up with some kind of a plan, an agreement to where we can sit down and go over it and then see if we know, if we all agree on it, and then we can go from there.
I think the past renters had a problem with the windows and the roof, and I think we replaced the windows already, correct?
Yeah.
So it just needs a roof to be redone, and that could be done with them there already. So we can rent it out right away and then just fix the roof. I think we got estimate on the roof, we tried it,
I think they did it.
yeah,
I thought so too.
yeah.
How much?
I've never heard of that, I don't know.
No, but how much would it be, like,
Oh,
Rental?
just, I'm asking just so that, you know, me and Monty can work on like a draft for. So, you know, like, you need.
We were
getting 900.
Thousand a month.
Is it everybody?
Is it gonna be a church? It's gonna be rented out to
Yes.
a pastor, to a
I
congregation.
believe so,
Okay.
yes, I mean, it's not going to be like, like where they're not gonna rent it out for party or.
No, yeah,
So yeah, I believe so, yes, I think, yes, correct, it is. Not there. Because, person who's interested said that. They go to her home. Yeah, and so it's getting, you know, more people, you know, there's more people attending, so that's why she, you know, really interested, so. So 1,000 rent fee. And so this is what I kind of, how like I said to Judy and to Ruben, you know, talking to them and also having them go and see it themselves, whoever's interested and whoever can join us, you know, obviously go. And then our thing was, you know, if they are willing, you know, if there are some
fixtures.
or improvements that
Upgrades.
need upgrades, there you go, that's something that they're willing to take on and we can kind of come up with an agreement as to, you know, maybe reduce their rent for a while or, you know, something like
I
that.
think the very first time we rented in Santa Maria was there, they, rent free, but they fixed it up for so much amount of time.
Oh, yeah, so, and, but yeah, so like I said, we'll, I'll make sure we'll set up a tour with her and, let you guys, whoever wants to join us.
See, the reason behind that is because I don't think we have the staff to be able to make the improvements themselves. Since we don't have the staff to do that, then you gotta hire out, you gotta hire a contractor, you know, who knows what they're gonna charge or whatever. I think if we can come up with an agreement with whoever wants to rent it, to where they do some of the fixtures.
It's
We-
major stuff, though, don't they have to have a licensed contractor to do the work too?
Well, that's one of the things about it is that within the congregation itself, there might be somebody that is bonded. You know, to do fixtures like that, you know, that's
Yeah,
what we're looking
They're
at,
nice.
yeah,
They can do stuff, right?
yeah, for right now, I think that.
And they're gonna be paying the water bill and the light bill, or?
Yes.
see them.
yes. Mhm. Yeah, so it would be $1,000 to rent plus.
Negotiable.
Yes.
That's not included.
Are we gonna negotiate the $1,000 or just leave it at a flat rate of $1,000? That's what I'm saying,
Oh, no, you guys are gonna come up with a fee and
Mhm.
that's what we're gonna present to them.
okay,
We're not, it's not gonna be like bargaining. Unless, like I said, they take on the costs, upgrades, but other than that, no. You as council will set the fee. We'll present it to who's interested and then.
You have another number you want to?
no? What? You guys said it was at 900 before,
Yeah,
I saw somewhere where it was at 800, so,
That was just.
I think that was the.
That was just a number?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's just.
how do the rest of you feel? Judy?
Myself, but since it's gonna be a church and they're gonna be doing a little bit of work on it, I say 800.
Well, see, that's the thing, we would,
It gets discounted from the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes. And and then, like I said, we'll
Mhm.
discuss that, all, but. it's a-
How do you feel, Vera?
Yeah.
You get $1,000 is good?
Mhm.
So we're all in agreement? We'll do $1,000 then, I guess, Martha,
Okay,
Mayor, sorry about that.
no, it's,
Yeah,
okay, so then we will, move on to item C, discussion and direction on rental agreement with the Greater Mountain Association. And that's the draft, that's in the draft. Yeah, it's like second to the last one. Yeah.
It's on 43.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I read the draft and to me, it all sounds pretty, it all sounds good.
Yeah.
It's just hoping that they're in agreement with it, but yeah, the draft, it's written up real good.
Okay.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Mhm.
You have to have insurance.
They do. Not necessarily, but they will have the understanding that. One of them.
Question number 9, the access to it.
Mhm.
So the association doesn't get a key to get in there? Have to get a hold of the city to get in there?
Well, I was thinking, I mean, we're not gonna charge a fee, so I feel like that.
In the past, they have keys to get in for when they have them clean. Or when it's rented, in, they get.
I mean, they can go in and check in and out a key.
The question I have behind that is that I've noticed that a lot of times GMA, they tend to want to do things on weekends because that's pretty much the time that they have available.
Mhm.
So yeah, or after hours. I know nobody's on call on weekends. I mean. Let's say, for example, if you, the mayor, are out of town, how are they gonna get a key?
So that's why I'm saying like on a Friday before,
Something like that?
they can go and say, you want to come in and get the key and then return it on Monday.
What's the purpose of that if the millions and the box, not on, but. What's the purpose of not having?
I think just to keep it, I don't know, I know it was said that last time there were like so many people giving out copies early.
Not true. Sophie had one, she was president and I was one.
I mean, and it was Nita who actually thought that she's the one that mentioned it to me that she thought that maybe that's what had happened and so.
Send it out.
Yeah, it was handed out.
Oh,
also.
we gave it to somebody else, yeah, so.
Mhm.
That could,
Yeah.
But
My-
maybe just give the president, just have one fee out, nobody else.
My suggestion to that would be. And I'm not saying that you ladies be trustworthy, that's what I'm intending to say here. John's an officer. Why not assign him a key, him and his wife? I don't think they're gonna make copies, I don't think they're gonna do anything like that, so. Why not assign them a key, at least they have a key to be able to get in and out, whether it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening, or it's, 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays or Sundays, at least this way they have access. That's my opinion, I don't know how you guys feel.
I think they should have a key, GMA. That building's been broken into. And they didn't find out until 3 or 4 days later. And they still didn't let them fix it or try to get it locked properly or something. I think they should have a key.
Okay.
Didn't you?
And then just what Drew had also brought up the last time is that if we're gonna do this for GMA, we can't.
No, we can't be biased,
Yeah,
yeah,
so just,
Just keep that
I
in
just wanna
mind.
make sure that we're all aware of that too.
Yeah.
So then they-
About, because we're not charging a fee. So if someone else comes and says, hey, we have this going and we wanna try, we want storage, we have to also. Provide. Something with.
That building right there is for the float. So it's for Mapton, it's not like for the soccer team.
No, I know,
They'll put
but
their stuff in there.
Drew, can you,
Charges the dollar. Well, we paid $50 last time, at the lifetime thing, when Mario was here. Okay. We used that, when we used that as a building that was tore down.
Drew, you had mentioned last time when we talked about this, just to, if we're gonna do this for GMA, we have to do it for. Yeah, straight across the board, correct?
In terms of if you charge something or not, yes. I mean, yeah. So if GMA is going to be charged $0 for storing their materials, and another nonprofit also asks for the same arrangement, the city can't just simply say, oh, no, yes, we're going to say yes to this, but we're going to then charge you, $50 a month. They could always say no if, for example, there isn't enough space. You don't necessarily have to enter the lease agreement, but if you do, or the rental agreement, I should say, if you do, you have to treat them the same way you're treating the GMA.
Storing this under that same float building?
Not necessarily.
Somewhere else, if we have storage somewhere else.
Well, that's the thing about it. That's the only building Mountain has that's available.
It's basically just for the floats.
It's
And,
supposed to be
and
for-
the float, and
For the-
and then he gave it to the GMA because they were in charge of the community days, or not community days. Miss Matson, little Miss Matson or Miss Matson or whatever. Not wrestling teams, so they wanna.
So is the church nonprofit? Are they under a nonprofit, most churches?
Yeah,
So we could go over and say we want that same deal the church has. I mean, it's pretty
No,
much the same, if you wanted to charge us for rent, it would be the same. If we paid with it.
If you want a key, don't charge. That's what they're trying to say.
I know, but if we wanted to pay so we didn't have to go through a worrying about.
But they don't want to give you a key because it's for free for a nonprofit.
well, that's
Well,
that's
that's what
that's
I'm
not true, because
asking.
we haven't agreed on that yet.
No, yeah, but that's the discussion, why they don't want to receive a different key for each one. But
Oh,
we-
no, we don't know, we never.
Even the
have
favor
ever-
for GMA. That's my understanding.
If you guys, well, let's say, if the council or the city is afraid of backlash, because we're not charging anything, then if you want, we can come up with, okay, we're gonna charge you $10 a month. Something like that, and then that makes it. People can't say, well, you gave it to them for free. Okay, then we just settle with $10 a month. If you guys are in agreement with that. Put a dollar bill behind it, put a dollar sign behind it, it doesn't have to be an outrageous amount, but, just put something behind it so that at least it shows that we're charging. We're not just letting people have it for free.
That's only because this organization does stuff for the community, not for a certain group of kids or themselves. It's for the community event, not personal event.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, we're not gonna charge. I mean, I don't think it would be right if we were to charge $1,500 a month for it. When you guys, everything you guys do, you're representing the city of Mapton. So let's charge $10 a month or 15 or 20 or whatever you guys decide and call it good. Because I tend to think that if we do give it up for free, we're gonna hear it.
You're gonna hear it to $10.
Yeah, we're gonna hear
So
it.
it doesn't matter.
We
And
never
before,
had,
No, I'm just saying, I'm not.
hear that.
we never had any problems, we never had any push.
Main thing is-
Yeah.
I don't
The
know.
last 4 years.
Yeah.
Before that,
But that's why I say GMA represents the city of Mapleton, and that in itself is all volunteer time. So they,
none of us get paid.
yeah, I
They get
mean,
mileage. Our time. our stuff that we, if they buy, I'm just saying, well, I have to be recused myself and probably there, because I can think we buy stuff for all the, our own pockets. Yes, the raffles for the Easter hunt, for the, we used to have for bagels and prizes.
And that's the thing about it, I think. People need to realize that GMA is representing the city of Mapleton, it's not a nonprofit organization. It's its own little entity, you know, it's doing it for a purpose, but they have a purpose behind it, they have a reason behind it. And that's to represent the city of Mapleton, you know, which I think is fantastic that they do that.
Okay, that's me. Here's the one. Okay, so next is discussion on the approval of resolution 2026-15. A resolution of the city council of the city of Mapleton, Washington, adopting city council rules and of procedure and providing for an effective date. So kind of like this last call, are you guys good with it? For the policy and procedures?
The only thing I saw here was, kind of caught my eye was. On the agenda preparation distribution, item number 3, where it says. In a strong mayor form of government, administrative matters and staff reports are placed on the agenda at the discretion of the mayor. Individual council members shall not direct staff to prepare agenda items without authorization of the mayor. My understanding is that as the council, we can add things to the agenda even right at the last minute if we choose to. If something comes up where it's not on the agenda, we can add it to it before the meeting even starts. You know, and it's,
Yeah, I agree, but, and we're just also,
is this in general?
yeah,
Okay.
like, you know, if you could have it to Marty by 4 PM, that'd be great. And if something does come up where it's like over the weekend, it's like, hey, you know what, I
Yeah.
really wanna talk about this. Then obviously, right, like,
Okay.
we'll, you know, we'll make that exception, but yes, if there's something that,
Okay,
yeah.
that's all I had as far as that goes.
Yeah, it was mainly just to go through you. I could be CC in it, but as long as you're in the know of what we're adding, that way you're not caught off guard when I'm making the agenda.
Yeah. Or go in there and let her know, or however, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or even if you just send a quick email and say, hey, I'm gonna go talk to Marty about adding this to, blah, 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 and CC her and, yep. Please. So other than that, are we good?
I am.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to move on to discussion E. Provide, so then have this start for
We'll adopt it.
road adopted. Discussion on the approval of resolution 2026-11, approving and adopting a policy regarding the rounding of cash transactions when pennies are unavailable in accordance with recently enacted state legislation and establishing an effective date.
That resolution can. What is it? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no, 2026-1.
On the resolution of the 25.
Mine says 2026.
That's an open.
Oh, here, it says 2025.
Yeah.
It's a typo.
I don't.
Mayor Drew would like to speak.
Huh?
Drew would like to speak.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, council members, you may recall that, and I believe we did this in January, we had brought a similar resolution to your attention for a policy. essentially a policy to try to deal with what will become more acute over time, the penny shortage that's being caused by the discontinuation of the penny in cash transactions. I also, you may recall that I had referenced that there was state legislation that was going through the legislature, the session, that was essentially discussing this very issue, and you tabled the discussion of adopting a policy and to see whether or not the legislature would take some action and to bring it back to your attention. That's exactly what happened. The legislature passed House Bill 2334, which indicates a process of when transactions should be rounded, whether up or down, in the event that it's an all cash payment and pennies are not available. If you look to the section 4, which I think is, section 4E, which is, starts with 4A, my apologies, which is at the bottom, starts at the bottom of page 55 in your package, the page 56. This essentially is the rounding policy that is established now in state law. In fact, Governor Ferguson actually signed the bill kind of sticking out how these transactions should be rounded. And so the actual policy and how we would round cash transactions, again, when there is a shortage of pennies. If you've got an individual with exact change, they can still pay in exact change. But if not, then we would follow this particular guidance, which is in line with the new state law. There are a couple of things in this policy that are not dictated by state law, but that we believe would be good practices or good parts of the policy to have regardless. The first one is involving what's called mixed tender transactions. So basically, those may be transactions where somebody is paying partly in, say, a check and the other part in cash. So there's a part of the policy here that discusses how the rounding works in a mixed tender transaction. It only impacts the cash side of transaction. We don't really anticipate seeing a lot of these types of transactions, but we felt that it was important to include in case the issue ever arises. The other one is the documentation of rounded transactions. This is on page 56 4E. This is something I am recommending just for a internal oversight. While I don't anticipate having to deal with a lot of these transactions, these types of transactions at the beginning, maybe $20, $30, 20 to 30 transactions a year would be my guess in the start of the year. I think it's important for the city to kind of keep a running list of that year over year. It may be able to help also with, future audits if in case, the auditor asks, hey, why is this off by a few cents? You can show the list of the transactions to kind of show that what might be, a 5 to 10 cent difference in a reconciliation is really being accounted for by the fact that the transaction was either rounded up or rounded down over the year. So that's the kind of the high level points of the proposed policy. Does the council have any questions?
I have a question, Drew.
Mm-hmm.
What are the chances that this is going to be implemented statewide? Or let's say for example,
No,
let's say for example, on a monthly water bill, who's going to be in charge of that? The person that writes up the bill, or the person that submits the bill? In charge of rounding up, rounding down.
You rounded up at there.
When they come pay.
Yeah. I mean,
They're going to pay the bill that they're receiving.
Yeah.
So on the bill.
So the bill itself will be the actual amount. And let's just say the bill would normally be, $103.27. It would still come in as $103.27. If a person was paying by check, they would pay a check for $103.27. If they wanted to pay it by a card, it would be $103.27. If they wanted to pay in exact cash, if they had $103.27 in cash, that's what they would pay. If they wanted to pay $103.27, but they had $103.30, and the city had 3 pennies, they would still pay that amount. They would just get 3 pennies back. This only deals with a situation when an individual comes in, wants to pay for something, and neither the city nor the individual has exact change. And so in my scenario, because the final digit of the cash transaction ended with a 7, so $103.27, instead they would pay $103.25. What the proposed policy then would do is that we would catalog that. We would say what the transaction is, when the payee was, when was the payment made, what was the original pre-rounded amount, what was the post-rounded amount, and what that difference is. So we can catalog over time the cents that are either being paid more than what the original amount was, or less, which is probably going to be more likely the amount that was less paid to the city. Does that make sense? And to answer your question about the statewide, what I just described in terms of, well, the last digit is a 7, so we will round down to the nearest 5. That is what was just codified into state law. So everybody is going to be operating under those rules.
Okay, thank you.
We're just doing all this, the council that just said short. Like, it's gonna be then.
I was just wondering if this is for the next 3 years, or is this gonna be forever from now on? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Drew.
Okay, so now we move on to visitors' comment.
First of all, my name is Andy Roscoe Mendoza. I live at 304 Fifth Avenue. First question will be, can you guys explain why you guys table a new business seat?
Because
Your attorney need more time.
Why do you guys table the seat?
Because like I said, after discussing it with our attorney, he's asking for us to.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Like I said, for the record, my name is Andy Israel Roscoe Mendoza. I reside at 304 Fifth Avenue in the city of Manhattan. I am here tonight regarding concerns about consistency, transparency, and equal application of utility policies within the city of Manhattan. Over the past few months, I have been involved in a dispute with the city regarding utility charges tied to properties location 324 3rd Avenue and 204 North 6th Street. Despite prior payments being accepted and considered paid in full, as well as a council level discussion regarding payment being accepted and considered paid in full, as well as council level discussion regarding responsibility for certain fractured costs, I am now facing additional charges and legal action. At the same time, I have become aware of information regarding another property with the city, specifically 125 4th Avenue, which had a delinquent utility balance reported in excess of over $10,000. It is my understanding that this balance may have been reduced to less than 90% of the cost. It is my understanding through the auditor's office and public record that this property owner are related to a city employee, the sister and the brother-in-law of Sophia and Marta. If any of this information is incorrect, I welcome clarification from the council tonight. However, if it is accurate, I am asking the council to explain how this decision aligns with the treatment I am receiving in my situation. What is the city policy for handling accounts and dispute charges? Are those policies applied equally to all residents, or is this a friend and family discount? And what safeguards are in place to ensure that personal relationships do not influence official decisions? Because when one account is reduced from over 10,000 to less than 2,000, while another property owner is being required to pay in full and more than owed, as well as facing legal action, it raises serious concerns about fairness, transparency, and equal application of authority. This is not just about my situation. It is about public trust, ensuring that all residents are treated equal under the same rules. I lost the sale on the home 324 3rd Avenue property due to Jerry Villa telling bank, Yakima Federal Bank, the certificate of my COO was not valid due to not being stamped. Due to that, I had to take it off the market Even when I tried to turn on the water on the property at first, he was not allowing service. Until Mayor Martha acknowledged it and and in turn gave me permission to get service turned on. Since then, I haven't gotten my stamp certificate. I respect requests that the councils clarify the decision and policy on the record. And that's all I have for. Thank you.
Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
Now, I apologize, Mayor. I've lowered my hand.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. So, we will be looking into this. We need to obviously discuss with our city attorney. So we will be getting that.
Okay, just as advice, Martha. Be a strong mayor. You know, learn fast. Don't listen to your staff. Show up. And I know you have a personal problems, life, you know, you're busy and all that. Cause to show up, going to council meetings, and maybe sometimes if you can't manage to be a mayor, maybe you should shut down and let everyone take over. Thank you.
Any speakers online? No?
No.
Okay. So, we will now be going into, executive session. For 20 minutes, regarding RCW 42.30.110 discussion with legal counsel about current and potential litigation. So we will return at 7:35.
I'd like to make a motion. Can we motion the executive session till after the regular meeting? That way, they don't have to be here any longer than they have to be here. Okay,
They're, they weren't there.
I was going to ask if it's alright if I, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Mind if I go get some clean then?
Bringing up everybody.
you know, like, just reminded me of back in the day when I was.
I just wanna make sure I'm not in trouble.
You're not gonna